Hello, and welcome to our virtual annual discipline meeting for the 2024-2025 school year. I am Dane Lamont, the School Partnership Specialist for Penn Highlands Dual Enrollment Program. During our fall 2024 semester, we plan to have our in-person ACE discipline meeting at the Penn Highlands Richland campus. Unfortunately, poor weather conditions forced us to cancel the event this year. However, our college liaisons were still able to hold recorded Zoom sessions to discuss specific topics related to the disciplines you teach. Please enjoy this recording of your annual discipline-specific activity, and we hope you can join us in person next year. Thank you for making this program possible for your school and your students.
Okay. My intention was to talk about AI across disciplines. AI is such the buzzword, and it is coming back around in so many different ways. For me, anyhow, this semester, that I wanted to talk to you guys through ACE because, in my expectation for the CIT 100 type class, when we get to the end of the slides, we're going to talk a little bit about how we might be changing or affecting that course because of AI. So let me see here. Rick, if you remember, I put pulled a little information from a website. The website was talking about the future of AI in education, and the focus here is pros and cons. Everything's falling into our field of education. And is it useful? Is it something that is just a buzzword? Are vendors just jumping on it, selling everybody AI and everything? And who's going to sit here and figure all this out to make something useful for us? Looking at some information that's been out there on the web, what I wanted to talk through was a little bit of, now let me get my screen up here. What do people believe the benefits are of AI? So I summarized that website a little bit in a mind map if we can talk to real quick. They had 9 benefits listed in no particular order. Enhanced personalized learning. And does AI help each student? Can we put AI into the hands of students in a way that they will learn at their pace? Can we make our tools anything that is using the grading side? I think this is part of things, and Alex, you might be able to jump in from Brightspace's perspective to say, do we have automation and AI coming into the tools, and how does that affect not the teaching in front of the students, but the assessment side? How do we capture and grade and let a tool help us with that as opposed to doing it for us?
Do you want me to jump in on that for Brightspace?
Yeah, sure.
So our learning management system is Brightspace, and they are looking into enhancing it with AI tools. So whatever learning technologies you use at your schools, the vendors that create those are probably already experimenting with AI enhancements. And not only that, they're probably working with third-party vendors that are going to be adding AI enhancements like automated grading, like Greg just mentioned. For instance, I know Penn State, or no, I'm sorry, it's HAC, Harrisburg Area Community College, is using one. I forget the name, but it's become extremely popular. But there's ethical concerns already that this AI tool is doing all the grading of students, and some of the students are objecting. So there will be ethical lines that are going to come up when it comes to AI as a grading tool for instructors. But you're definitely going to see those things become more common. So those will be issues to sort out.
And I think it comes back to crossing over with on the ethical side. If we are using AI in the background, but we're not letting the students use AI, some of the school districts, some of the schools are very against bringing AI into anything. And I don't know, Eddie or Cassie, if this is happening to you. If it is, let us know, especially whenever I get to the slide to talk about the CIT 100, because some of the changes may actually go against what the school districts are allowing. And I want to make sure we don't do that if we can help it.
We
So,
had some training at Greater Johnstown. There was a gentleman from UPJ that came down and he gave us 2 in-service days of his time. And he showed us like all the benefits, pros and cons. And it's kind of left up to each teacher what they want to do, how involved they want to be with it, and things like that. The school district didn't actually make any policies about if it could or couldn't be used. Um, I mean, I see it being beneficial, but what I don't like about it being in a teacher aspect is like it's hard to track down if a student used it or not because they really never duplicate the same thing over again.
right. So keep that in mind as we get to talk a little bit later here. So some of the other benefits, more engaged learners, will they really be? Does gamifying, has that ever really helped the teaching side, making things more of a game for learners? I mean, it seems like fun. I know the one thing my kids never liked growing up were all of the educational, specifically educational games that they got at a very young age. Um, but tools that are out there are getting AI enhanced. The Kahoot and Minecraft education, they're getting things built into them that can be more engaging potentially, but you still have to come back with the right content. Uh, Improved accessibility. Anybody with disabilities, speech recognition software, things that are adding into all of this is AI, but it's not necessarily AI that we're thinking of on the day-to-day basis. We really get tied around AI being, is it writing the code? Is it solving the problem for them? Or is it, working on the paper and the students aren't really learning? So actionable insights, AI can look at lots of data, and this may be behind the scenes for us to look at, our students over the years, students over the semesters. Can AI help us look at that and update our educational software or our educational processes? AI is starting to hit more and more areas than we originally saw last year. Scalability, does AI really let our programs work with students? If we don't make a change to CIT 100, then I think they're actually going to fall behind. In today's world where everything is happening with AI, if we're not teaching them how to use the tools, then they're not going to scale up to what their capabilities can be with all of these tools. Continuous learning, professional development for educators. Yeah, this is the other side of it. We, as the instructors, now have to also step up and continually be involved in what's going on AI wise and how that helps our tools and how we reflect that all the way back down to the students. Security and assessment integrity. This is proctoring. This is some of our tools already have this. And Alex, you may be involved in this answer again, but whenever we have students that are taking any type of exam through a lockdown browser, there may be AI sitting in the background monitoring those students for certain things.
That's correct, Greg. So we have a tool called Lockdown Browser that can be paired with an extra piece of software called Respondus Monitor, and it uses video AI to monitor the students and see, are their eyes on the screen? Are they looking at the screen where they're typing in their answers, or are they looking away? Are they looking down at a phone? Is their screen not on? And if they are doing that, it's going to spit out a notification and a report to the instructor saying, this student wasn't looking at the screen. They probably had notes on the ground or something like that. And so we can use AI in that way to detect cheating. So yeah, those things are out there.
So better security and assessment as we're giving tests. This one, part of me, I want to trust students are doing the right thing, but we also know if you give them the opportunity, there's a good chance they're going to figure out a way to work around anything we put out there, and it just becomes a battle. What's who's got the best technology? Who's got the best process to figure that out? Do they have their cell phone off to the side, or they, have it your if you mute yourself. Some of our tools, some of our CompTIA assessments, they are very strict on what's going on with students, and they're using technology to make sure and manage it. So one other potential benefit here was a more efficient classroom. Does AI actually help? Will it help track student behavior? Will it help keep track of a classroom enough to make it a positive motivational thing? I'm not sure where the tools are for that yet, but there's a lot of different things that AI is starting to touch that we may not have thought of. And that's what's going to lead me to the next thing that I want to mention real quick. Here was a list. This is a fairly long list of AI in education that's already out here. I'm just going to scroll up and down through it real quick, see if any of the headings make sense. Virtual campus activities, interdisciplinary learning, real life simulations, awareness and virtual tours of the building that you're in, having guest speakers come through. I was talking to Rick the other day about we are working with some VR headsets, the MetaQuests 3, and they are actually tied to an environment that you can watch sporting events through your headset. And I was like, who would really want to do that? And I tried it, and there was a upcoming basketball game um, that was broadcast through this headset, and you literally walk into a 3D environment. You navigate through a room that looks out into the stadium, and you walk out into this platform, and you are watching very tall basketball players. You're like about this big, sitting next to the looking up at everybody running up and down the field or the court. So having guest speakers and events, this is happening already, and they're really pushing hard to get people to start using more hardware, but AI is coming and tacking on to those types of events also. Predictive analytics, parent teacher communications, helping you build a test, as Alex said, building into the learning management system, tools that help us as in professional development. Cybersecurity is an obvious one that I'm going to speak to real quick after this slide. Safety and security, plagiarism detection. This one is one of the common ones. It's hit a lot of people. How do we detect if somebody's writing what they say they're writing? I've had my students ask AI questions, and I said, give us responses as if you were talking to a kindergarten, if you were talking to a first grader, the same response for a technical answer, and had the students read it back. AI was able to respond as if it was talking to first graders just as easily as if it was talking to an advanced someone doing graduate level work on the same topic. And it is very, very well put together that if you ask it the right way, you may not be able to tell easily if somebody was just completely generating it through AI. Some of the tools are comparing against data that they know and bringing back possible answers. But what happens if the tool's wrong? Who do you trust? Do you give the AI the benefit of the doubt, or do you give the student the benefit of the doubt? Discussion boards, academic research, adaptive learning. That was just some of them this way. There's a bunch. There's one here that I wanted to point out that I thought was very interesting. AI coming into dyslexia detection. They're using it to help determine if certain learning disabilities can be identified earlier, whenever some students may not know it. Skill gaps, languages, proctoring we already talked about. There's so many different pieces of AI. I just wanted to make sure across disciplines, how do we fit all of these things in, and who is responsible for making the changes and bringing it to the attention of the students. Real quick, the next piece I wanted to give just a slight little bit of background on. This past semester, I was able to attend a conference from a cybersecurity perspective. This is what the conference was, the 2024 National Cybersecurity Education Colloquium. And they're looking at the demands of cybersecurity and education in workforce and development across the country. What does this mean from an AI perspective? Well, they're focused on two main tracks right now. The country, the DoD, wants AI tools taught to people who are learning cybersecurity, but they also want AI to be used to help make better security concepts. So there's two different practices that are going to turn into programs from a cybersecurity perspective, from the beginning of a foundation and then understanding how AI fits in, and take one track or the other. On a very side note, for any teachers that are curious about cybersecurity that I haven't talked to about this yet, in the CAE, the Center for Excellence in Cybersecurity, there were two areas of that I wanted to bring back to the high school side of things. There's materials out there for educators that are just teaching at the high school level, and materials for students at the high school level that you can access. And I'd left the QR codes here if anybody wants to start there, or look at the email addresses at the bottom. ring@caecommunity.org, or the caeepnc.org/ring. We'll give you some background there. But on this first piece, there's also some teaching opportunities for in-service for high school students. There's 160 students enrolled or available. In this case, there's funding for 175 more coming up next summer, that if you wanted to be enrolled in some cybersecurity training, that they would be paying for it. You just have to get into the program. So I wanted to make sure I at least presented that while we were talking. But that gets us down to the future of our CIT 100 class. CIT 100, currently we are teaching it focused here on Microsoft products. How to use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft Excel, and Microsoft in general. We're teaching it the same way that we've used Microsoft products over the last 20 years. As they've been introduced, we make documents, we make various Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint slides, But now, what happens with AI? We we can talk to AI and say, make me a flyer for this. And we don't have to have any skills associated to it. How do we up our game? How do we make this more useful technology to the students and teach them something that is the basics of computing, but now involves some of these concepts we've just gone through about AI? Do do any of you have any feedback on this? Thinking about this? Those that are here, if you do, we can talk. Those that are online or watching the video, reach out and contact us so that we can, continue to bring any of your ideas into our upcoming efforts. So Eddie or Cassie, any thoughts? Hmm.
Well, you came to my class a few years back, and you saw like I followed along with the curriculum that Penn Highland has, but I kind of make mine more personal.
Yes.
Meaning, like whenever I have my students do a project, I have it like specific slides that they have to have information, like a specific type of background. So it'd be like literally so much more work to plug that in to get an AI result as compared to the students just do it individually on their own. So like I kind of like made it where I mean, it's possible to use that now, but I think that the age that my students are, which is ninth grade, 14, 15, that they don't have enough experience using that. If they're just starting out, um, I personally think that it's a useful tool for them to use and to know how to use it, but not to rely on it. So like, I mean, I even share my curriculum with you, like you saw. So
Yes.
like, I make like one paragraph that they'd write needs to be a certain like style, color, size. So they kind of have to go in and format themselves before they submit it to me for a grade, so that I know that they're doing their own work, not just one font the whole entire time or one color and
And,
things like that. So I kind of individualized my curriculum,
and,
and I think
and
that helps um, reducing the reliability of AI for my students to cheat my class.
okay. And I think, Eddie, that's the equivalent of us growing up learning how to use the calculator, but knowing we still had to do math by hand.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
mean, they can. I want them to use it because it is useful and it does give some valuable information. But I don't want it doing everything for them.
okay,
Like whenever I write papers, I'm going to be honest. Like I write the paper, and then, I if I find a spot that I don't like how it sounds, I use AI to maybe try to bolster my paper and use that. But I'm not relying solely on that to come back with a totally written paper from start to finish.
right. And to be honest, I can really tell whenever a student who has hardly produced anything throughout the semester is suddenly writing 5 or 6 page papers using terminology that is exactly on par for what should be said, but has nothing to do with the way they speak.
Right. And I even do that. Like right now, I'm working on it as well. They're doing slideshow presentations. We use Google. We
Right.
don't use Microsoft, unfortunately. But anyway, they need to come up in front of the class and speak on the presentation by not relying on just reading off each slide. So like I could tell, like if there's words on the slide that they can't pronounce as compared to whenever they're just talking about it. So
And
that's another way that I check their work as well.
and in the that that reminded me of the uh symposium that I was at. There was a speaker who actually came up, and he was the head of a college that was talking about one of their programs, and he was presenting material that he should have known. He was stumbling over words in his presentation. He was
Right.
not able to talk without looking down and reading things off of the paper in front of him. He used 45 minutes of our time to read us something that I'm almost positive AI generated for him. Cassie, did you have anything to add or?
I feel the same as Eddie, that I love it as a tool, but don't want them relying on it too often. I'm currently not, I only teach CIT 100 in the spring,
Okay.
and I teach a lot of other different courses, and we got new curriculum this year. So I really haven't had much time to even think about yet what I'm going to be doing with the CIT 100. But I do know, I use all the Microsoft products, and I'm teaching accounting right now. And I know my students, I'm expecting them to use Excel, and they really do not know the spreadsheet. Sometimes we use Google Sheets or Excel. I have Excel in my classroom. They have Chromebooks that have the sheets on it. So I try to go back and forth and have them use that when I'm not in the CIT 100 class, but they really don't know Excel at all. So I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get them in the CIT 100, some of them, and make sure they do know how to use Excel.
Okay.
Greg,
So-
I'm wondering how you deal with that person. Well, you mentioned this was a speaker, but let's say it was a student that you watch and you say, well, I think AI wrote that. That's not you. You can't even pronounce those words right. What's the next step then? How do you deal with that person?
Yeah, from my perspective, I will as I'm grading it, I will give them some feedback on, hey, let's talk about this because I don't think this was your best effort from a personal perspective. And then I changed the way my sort of like what Eddie's saying, I changed some of my actual assignments so that they have to be more personal. And instead of being formal, I push them to be more personal.
Right.
And Alex, that goes against, having you come in and talk to them of how to do all the formal, use the library for things. But I have to make sure that they know, that I'm getting the response from them as opposed to a tool.
Yeah, I kind of do something neat as well. It's maybe you guys could use as well. I kind of have like a partner projects on, and I make it more personal. Like, what's your siblings' names and what's your dog's names and where do you live, like the exact address and things like that. And I make the other person give the information from interviewing the original person, but the original person has to create, the assignment. So just say it was a Google Slides, and they had to create 10 slides, like, what's their favorite sport, what's their favorite food to eat, and then the other person basically has to answer for that person. And I can actually just sit there and watch their like facial expression if it's correct or not.
Sure.
So that's
Okay.
just like I'm just trying to alleviate, cheating in my class, number one. But the use of AI is not going to be able to generate that answer. It can create an answer, but it's not going to be specific for that individual person in my class, for the whole class.
Okay. Rick, do you want to go and start next or?
Sure. The aspect of artificial intelligence that I'm using in my classes, I teach communication and media production, is primarily been used so far in the public speaking class. And what I've used it for is to help students build better outlines. And from what I've seen so far, it's working. I don't worry too much about the presentation aspect of it because that's actually, yeah, you got to get up there and talk now. So that hasn't changed. You're still doing that, obviously. But as far as the specifics of the outline, the few I've seen so far that have gone through AI have worked really well. For example, right now we're doing, as our last big speech of the semester is persuasion speeches, and they have to use what's called Monroe's motivated sequence, which is a 5-step process that gets you from, getting the audience's attention in number 1, then down to number 5, which is act, which is do something. Like if it were a car commercial, the final step is go buy a car. It has to be something very, very specific and very action oriented that you do. And students always kind of stumbled over that because they seem to be more geared toward an information speech. Like, I just want to talk about the Civil War or something like that, you know. But this is a persuasion speech. Find something you want to persuade us about, and that can end with a physical step of here's what you do now. And so far, and literally, I've just started this week with these students doing speeches, and we went in advance to the computer lab, and I gave them time, and I taught them how to use our Copilot on Microsoft to do that. And I'm very optimistic at this point because the couple I've seen that have used it have done really well. And then having said that, I just had a student today who gave me an information speech. You know, so he got a bad grade, and I said, and I'm not sure if you understood the assignment because you know you have to use the 5 points of Monroe's motivated sequence. And I know from experience, I've taught forever, you know, public speaking, and the students wrestle with that. The 5 steps are just something that they really stumble over, and I'm really eager to see if AI will help them understand what the 5 steps are and to put them in the proper order, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so far, I am optimistic about that. The other thing I'll mention is we do in one of my writing classes for media, we do a year in review thing that we actually send to local media. I'm connected to some of the local radio stations and such, and we always offer this, and they always take it, and it's a neat little project for us to work on. But the students produce something that says, like, you know, well, in January of 2024, blah, 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 you know, this happened, and there was an earthquake in China, and the president said this, and the governor said this, and we put that into a neat little 60-second thing, and then we actually record it, and we send it out to local stations. So it's a neat project that involves writing and producing and sending it out, and it actually gets airplay that way. This is the first time that I've ever used AI with that, and that has really, really helped because it's difficult to get students to understand kind of what is news and what news we would use. For example, in a project like this, we don't use bad news, I guess I could say, in a way. We're not going to report on somebody who died last January in a house fire in Johnstown, you know, because that would be very you know, hurtful to whoever those survivors are who are listening to the radio right now, to remember that's when my brother died in a fire, or, you know, something like that. So we don't do anything that is you know, death related or tragedy related along those lines. But the stories are usually like, you know, such and such a company hired 50 new people, or the motorcycle rally was canceled, but then they brought it back, and, you know, this festival happened really well, you know, that kind of thing. And the only way you get this information is through a lot of digging around on websites. And students always, I think, got bored and got frustrated and et cetera. Using AI, that really worked out much better. AI was able to you know, search, I don't know, probably dozens of websites and say, oh, here's the big things. Here's 3 big things that happened on the state level, on the Pennsylvania level, in, you know, March of 2024. Boom. And so they've got those, and then they've got local ones. We do actually Johnstown and Altoona. And then here's like the national, here's the international. So they get all these kind of bullet point stories and then decide which ones they like the best, and which ones kind of flow together, and which ones can be used to make a 60-second spot. And this went so much better this year than in every year that I've done it. And I've done it for probably 5 or 6 years now. And it's just, it was more fun for them. I think I sensed excitement as they were kind of putting it together, because it was more kind of production oriented rather than digging through mounds and mounds of websites trying to find one fact that they could use in their story.
So Rick, from my perspective, that was using AI more than just a tool. You're using it more like an assistant to go off and do something and get data or get information back to put it into a product.
Right.
Okay.
And it was really good. You know, from my perspective, that course is not about necessarily, it doesn't need to be about research. It doesn't need to be about, how did you find this or something like that. It needs to be, just get these top maybe 6 stories for the month, or you'll get more than 6, but decide which ones are the best, and they kind of flow together, and they kind of sound good and positive or whatever it might be, and then put them in order. Maybe you want to go largest to smallest, whatever it might be, in order to get something that flows nice for 60 seconds, and then record it, then send it out. So that's where the focus is. So I don't really want them spending hours and hours and hours online finding one element that happened in Altoona in August of 2024. I want them to spend more time on crafting it once they've got it. It's almost like if you were to imagine, okay, today we're going to make a sculpture, but first you have to go out and find all the course materials and mix it together and make the clay. I'd kind of rather you got the clay out of a box, and now that you got the clay, put it here and sculpt something really cool. So if that analogy works, that might be better suited for what I'm trying to say. I'd rather you could go to the box, get the raw material here, and then put it together into something that sounds good for 60 seconds. And it really worked well this year.
Okay. I think I can even use that as some feedback towards ideas to update the CIT 100 concepts. But
Oh, really?
are we over to Alex to talk now?
I think he's been waiting patiently.
All right, Alex, you're up.
All right, my turn. Can I share my screen? Or did you make me co-host?
I
Let me see.
don't know if Rick can or if I did, but
Oh, I can't share my screen. We're good.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Right, yeah, so I'm Alex. I actually work in the college library, and I've actually put together some AI resources for students and faculty. So I'm just going to show you those real quickly, and hopefully these will help you out as you put together your classes or maybe some things you want to show your students. So if you go to the Penn Highlands website and you hover over academics, you'll see the library on the right here. So from our website, we really have 2 main collections of information, one for students and one for faculty. And you see we have an AI guide here where I tried to locate all kinds of resources on artificial intelligence, how to understand what it is. Also about crafting policies to use in your classes regarding the proper use of AI. We've actually gotten some questions from our student government here that they would like more transparency from some instructors about how they're going to use AI in their classes. Most of our instructors do have like a policy on using AI, but there's a lot of confusion and some people aren't sure how to tackle it. But students are sort of thinking about these things and they're kind of asking about what the policies are. So there's examples on here of possible policies you could use. I found some from Carnegie Mellon, the University of Pittsburgh, from major publishers in higher ed. So if you don't have a policy, you might want to start looking around. There's a lot of great examples online from a lot of local schools, Ivy Leagues, things like that. They really boil down to 3 approaches. One, which is have at it, use AI as much as you want. One that's more of like a hybrid approach where you can use it in certain ways to like enhance your learning, like I think kind of like how Rick is suggesting and Greg too. And then the third is just to try to outright ban AI, which I can understand why you might want to do that, but it's obviously very difficult. But those are the approaches that most instructors are taking. So if you haven't set it on a policy, you might want to start looking at that. And there's examples there. We have some guides on some teaching strategies. And we also have some guides here at the bottom that if you do want to go down the road of preventing cheating with AI, there's some tools and guides there to do so. I'm also working on a different presentation that I'm going to give with Rick in a few months that'll cover that in more detail. But those are some of the things for instructors to start thinking about using AI for their classes. But what also might be helpful for you is some of the resources you might use or recommend to your students on AI. There we go. So I give them some just general advice on using AI, but one thing that I think that I've seen from other institutions is a lot of faculty sort of recommend is to get out in front of the AI issue with students and talk to them and discuss using AI in an ethical way in your classes and kind of set the tone for how you want them to think about it. Of course, some students are just going to misbehave no matter what you do, as I'm sure you're well aware, but a lot of students will be a little more receptive if you try to talk to them about ethical ways to use AI. And I've sort of outlined some of those, and they do go along with, I think, what Greg and Rick are suggesting here about using it as a way to supplement or enhance your learning rather than just replace your learning and do all the work for you, which is what we don't want. So there's guides here. It's a little handout for students. I also have like a little YouTube video with a lecture that I put together for students about the ethical ways to use AI. And I'm a librarian, so a lot of this deals with research, but I think a good bit of it would be applicable to other areas too. I also did kind of an overview of a lot of the AI tools that are out there, and this is by no means exhaustive because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of AI tools already. But I sort of break down a lot of the common ones. If you're going to advise students to use one with any kind of research aspect to it, I generally recommend Microsoft Copilot, because if you do a query into Copilot, it will give you a list of links to where it got that information from. So students will be able to see the original sources for that information, so it's a little easier for them to verify the quality of that information if that's something you're concerned with. Plus, Copilot can generate images. If your students do have a Penn Highlands account, they can get our enhanced version of Copilot, which is a higher quality version of Copilot, so that's nice too. Copilot is based on ChatGPT, but the version of ChatGPT that students have access to through Copilot is a higher quality version than the one that you get for free online. And there's some other tools I recommend on here. Two that are particularly interesting. One is called Elicit, which actually search online for scholarly articles. If you want your students to dip their toes into scholarly peer-reviewed research, Elicit will let you do that. So it search for scholarly articles, and then it gives you AI-generated summaries of them. And one that I think is even more interesting is called Consensus. It also lets you search online for scholarly peer-reviewed articles. And then what it does is it takes all those articles and sort of does like a large scale analysis of them and tries to determine what is the scientific consensus on this particular topic. Let me show you real quick. I won't go on for too much longer, but so here we have consensus. You do have to make a free account to use it, but here we have one question that it has as an example. Does exercise improve cognition, right? So we click on that. And basically, it scans all the peer-reviewed information available on the internet, and it gives you, well, yeah, the vast majority of scientists do believe that it improves your cognition if you exercise, but there is at least some dissent. And of course, depending on the topic, it might be divided up differently. But it's a really nice way for students to kind of get an overview of a topic that they might use for different projects. Obviously, for CIT 100, maybe not quite as much, but depending on your discipline, it might be more or less useful. And maybe for certain CSC topics, you might find some good information in here. So any questions about any of those tools so far?
Alex, I think that what you have, hopefully more people will come to and access. If you're outside of the college, is there any restrictions to getting into this information?
No, all these library links that I've showed you so far are completely available to the public, so you could refer your students to them. I'll actually drop a link to the library website in the chat right now. Like I said, you can get to it from the college main page, but just in case, I'll have the link out here, as our web address is slightly different than the college main page. I believe you do have access to, you have Penn Highlands email addresses, don't you?
The ACE faculty?
Yes, they all have Penn Highlands email addresses, right?
I believe
Yeah,
so.
I thought so. So I'll also point out too, this might be just something you find interesting, but there's also a lot of discussion on AI in this database I'll show you. So like any good library, we have databases, right? So if you go to student resources and databases, you see we have EBSCO and all these things available. And we can actually make these available to your students too, if you would be interested. So just ask Kaylee for my contact information and she'll get you in touch with me and I can show you how you can give these things to your students. But in terms of AI, we have a subscription to the Chronicle of Higher Education, which is like the #1 magazine news source for higher ed. And there's a lot of instructors in here discussing different strategies in terms of approaching AI in the classroom. So you might find some interesting ideas in here as well for you to use in your classes.
All right.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to cover, unless anybody has any questions.
Alex, just real quick for my own benefit, when you're using consensus, do you pose a question to the AI and say something like, what do most scholars say is the biggest cause of cancer or something like that, and then it gives you that diagram and that information? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. You can pose your own questions. I just use an example question they had for quickness sake for tonight. But yeah, you can pose questions to it and it'll do its best. Of course, like any AI tool, you might have to phrase it a couple times, but it does a pretty good job.
I like that again for persuasion speeches, because I often encourage students as well. You're not committing your life to this topic. You're allowed to go in any direction you want. So, if you want to say like gun control or something like that, maybe you feel this way. It would be fun to do a speech on the other side to see, to kind of see what the other side believes about that issue. And this seems like this would be a pretty interesting tool to explore along that area. I mean, like you brought up, how much does exercise improve cognition? Well, maybe your topic is going to be exercise does not improve cognition. And, so who says that? And you've got a
Yeah.
minority of researchers there who say just that. And that's kind of an interesting angle for something like that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, for any kind of argumentative speech or essay or something, yeah, you could find some good ways to break down different opinions that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Well,
should say too, one last thing about consensus and elicit, since they use scholarly articles. Some of the articles, when you actually try to proceed beyond the summary and click on to see the full article, some will be behind a paywall, unfortunately. But if you use the library's EBSCO and other databases, you may be able to find them for free there. So not all the articles will be free in those databases, but we may be able to locate them for you elsewhere. But a lot of them will be, so it does kind of depend, like everything on the internet. Some stuff's free, some stuff's not.
Alex, I appreciate the overview there. Rick, I think I am able to take information from yours into some of the upcoming efforts for CIT 100. A little bit of mix of everything, I hope. Uh, Eddie and Cassie, I appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you for having us.
I thought we were expecting more, but snow and everything else, people get caught up, hopefully viewing these things online, and maybe we'll get some more questions and motivation out of it.
I have one question for Rick, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
In your class, like the students really aren't doing public speaking though, because they're putting together a 1-minute video, 60-second video. So
Right. That's not a public speaking class. That's
Okay.
actually, we have a class called scripting for radio, TV, and e-media.
Okay.
And we produce things. I'm kind of connected to local media in a big way. So
Right.
we for example, do a 6-hour Christmas show. And I have the students write the Christmas show, but it's basically this is coming up next. We do this and
Right.
whatever. But yeah, so it's not a public speaking thing per se.
Okay.
That's a production,
Yeah.
Right.
media production thing.
For
So I was
those
just going to ask a couple things, because like my biggest thing with my students is just trying to get them the confidence to get up there and just speak in front of the crowd. And I was just going to ask you some things like what you do, but it's kind of different because they're doing it online, making a
Well,
video.
I have both inline and in class public speaking people. And the way I structure mine is we do generally a speech a week. So there's like 15 over the course of the whole semester. And probably 70% of them are what I call little speeches. So you don't have to give me an outline. You have to do like a 2-minute speech, a self-introduction, or a 2-minute story, or a 2-minute comedy, different things like that, just designed to get you up there and get you kind of used to it a little bit more. And then they have the bigger speeches, which are information, demonstration, commemoration, and persuasion. So those are the 5 to 7-minute speeches that do have to have outlines.
Yeah, I was just, like I said, I'm just trying to get my students to get up and talk in front of a crowd, because they're definitely going to have to, like, to apply for a job, college admissions, and things like that. So,
and we're getting, and I kind of accept that argument that we're going in the wrong direction as a society, because now more than like maybe when I was growing up, everybody has cell phones. And everybody's like looking down like this and, looking at their cell phone instead of what we call like the Superman pose or the Wonder Woman pose, where you're standing there and you're You say, hello, my name is Rick, and I'm here to talk about, you kind of project your voice and you look authoritative and you're
Right.
ready to go out. That's what students wrestle with doing. And like I said, we're going in the wrong direction because now people walk down the street, like this and walk into buildings, because they're so geared to looking down, and that's the opposite of that Superman pose,
Right.
to look down. So I in my classes I've actually done that where I say, okay, we're gonna do the Superman pose or the Wonder Woman pose. No speech is involved. Just get up there and give me your best Superman pose. I have everybody raise their hand, and when you give them eye contact, they can put their hand down. Like
Right.
Superman has, power from his eyes, whatever, supervision. So everybody puts their hand up, and it's usually fun because I tell the audience, look, if he doesn't look at you, don't put your hand down. You have to identify that he's looking at you, not like the whole left side of the class.
Right.
He's looking at you specifically, and if you don't see that, leave your hand up.
Right.
So it gets to be a silly thing, but we have fun with it, and people don't seem to mind it too much. But everybody gets up there and does their thing like this, and looks at this person and looks at that person, and hands go down, and then I get to tell them in the next review, look, I know you can do this. I saw you.
Right.
So I know
Yeah, that's
you
what I
can
do. My
get the
first one, I
audience.
just have them just basically, I'm like, I'm not grading for your content. I just want you to get up and speak just to get this confidence. And then the next
Yeah.
one we do is going to be a lot different. So that's good. Thank you.
Sure.
So for those of you that didn't notice, you might, if you closed your eyes and listened to Rick talk, you might recognize him off of some local radio station background. But I'm not going to reveal that. That's up to him.
And that station's already gone. So they've in the years I've worked there, they had 3 owners and about 9, call letter changes and things like that. So nobody knows. I can tell you, Greg, when I first started teaching, it was fun because like every student, or at least a student in a class would say, "Don't I know your voice? Where do I know your voice from? I've heard you before." And then as the years have gone by, it's like fewer and fewer of those. And now it's all kind of like, yeah, my mom used to listen to you. Yeah. So I'm waiting for, oh yeah, my granddad used to listen to you. That should be the next step that I hear.
Okay. All right. Well, that's everything I have, everybody. I appreciate the discussion. We will be in touch. If you need anything, let me know.
Sounds good.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Have a happy holiday.
Yep, you too.